So we can control the frontal, our decision making. We can control that because it comes from the development that we begin to receive as children growing up due to our influence or our environment. It helps us to develop whether to be positive or negative. So we can control our conscious. Now let's look at the word subconscious. Subconscious is existing in the mind but not immediately available to the conscious. Subconscious is the part of your mind which operates without your awareness and over which you do not have active control. So if God was our enemy, where would he attack us at? He would attack us in our subconscious. So therefore, since God is not our enemy, but Satan is our enemy, where would he attack us? Where would he try to influence us? He would try to influence us in our subconscious mind. Now the question becomes, how in the world do he influence us in our subconscious mind and makes us react in a certain way in our conscious mind? Well, the way that he do that is by he use things that are known as triggers. They call it what? PTSD. He used traumatic events that happened to us. He used different things that goes on that we try to forget. Because remember, we can control our conscious mind. So we try to forget those things, but they're still sitting back there in our subconscious mind because we have not been taught how to get rid of it from both parts of our conscious. So they're sitting there waiting for a trigger. So the enemy comes in and he begins to influence those triggers. That's why God tells us in Romans 12:2, he said, be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. In other words, you got to constantly be resetting your mind. Because the enemy is always looking for that trigger. And all he needs is just one little event to occur. It could be somebody say one word that brings you back into that time. And we said our mouth is the most worst part of us. Because we'll say it in a minute. We'll be like, ooh boy, back in the day, this is what I would have did for you saying what you said. You just gave the enemy a good influence over you. Our mouth is our destruction in today's society. Our mouth. Because we have built up in ourselves to voice what we feel. And some things just ought not need to be said. You may feel it, get off to yourself and ask God to remove it. I went through a situation 2 weeks ago, going on 2 weeks ago. I was in a situation where I was offended at what happened. I was offended, very much so, at the treatment that was going forth. The strikes that was going forth, I was offended. And I could have said something. But it was wisdom. Wisdom is the best thing to have. Wisdom told me saying something will only make bad matters worse. Holy Spirit told me, be quiet. Be quiet, because the individuals that was in this situation with me needed to see this. So if you really just take a moment and use your conscious mind, the Holy Spirit is going to tell you exactly what to do in the form of a lesson. Okay. Now Now, we was talking about life is a sequence of physical and mental experiences that makes up our existence, also known as life. We as individuals need to learn that it is not an easy process. The word process is a series of actions or steps taken in order to achieve a particular end. A series of actions and steps taken to achieve a particular end. That is known as process. So in life, we go through things that are lessons to teach us how to react in those things to get a righteous end. Those of us that are believers. For many of us, we believe once we become saved, in whatever religious factor you may be in, we believe that once we become saved, that our thought process is that life is to be perfect. No problems, no issues. We saved now. We're part of God. We ain't going to have no situations. We ain't going to have no issues. Everything is going to be streets of gold, beautiful clouds. Everything's perfect. Not going to have issues because we're saved now. Because we're not being taught that that's when we become a target. Because we're now not on the enemy's side, but we're on God's side. And because of that, we're now going to be targeted. You know, they have this thing that is called racial profiling, where a certain race is targeted, not because they did something wrong necessarily, but because of their race. So they're being targeted. Well, that's the same thing. When you are no longer on the side of the enemy, who is Satan, you are now a target for him to try to influence back to his side. Okay, this month's series, Seeing Your Blessing in the Midst of Your Storm, has several meanings to it. There's several meanings to this title, this series that we're doing for this month. The first one is to teach you, as sure as you live, life will happen. Let's just stay in reality. Let's not go into fantasy land. We ain't on Fantasy Island. They ain't that little guy, what they used to call him, oh, I can't think of his name now, but we ain't on Fantasy Island. We in reality. Life is gonna happen in reality. Okay, it won't be pleasant, but it will always have a purpose. That's what this series for this month is about. Things in life won't always be pleasant, but it will always have a purpose. This is something that spiritual sectors, churches, ministries, whatever you want to call yourself, this is something that we really need to start teaching people. We need to start teaching people that once you're saved, life is going to happen. And it ain't going to always be pleasant, but there's always a reason to why it is happening. That's what we need to start teaching people, so that people will have wisdom in how to conquer life, whether good or bad, how to conquer it. If that scripture that tells us that we are more than conquerors, well, if we're more than conquerors, how am I more than a conqueror? How am I more than defeated? I need to know this, so that I know when life happens, the bad part of life happens, I know I can get through this. But it has to be taught to me. See, when we become members of a congregation, we're that facility, that church, or that ministry, however you want to put it, we are their children. And being that we're their children, that's the time that we need to be taught. We need to be developed so that we can grow. because we're their children. They're our parent. And that's the time that we need to be developed and learn to grow. Reaction is an action performed or a feeling experienced in response to a situation or event.